Welcome back, those with ears to hear. We are on episode 44 today. That is a nice round number.
That is a nice round number this time.
It divides easily by 2. But as you guys know, we have our email, which is the ears to hear podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah.
And I still hear rumblings about more small and simple things. We haven't gotten much more of them yet.
My dad's going to do one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've hear a couple people in my sphere saying that they're going to do one, so get those going.
There you go.
You're going to have to keep listening to us. And I really enjoyed Alan's last week, so I guess that's not a bad thing. We're all learning stuff, but hey.
That one was hard to keep at 15 minutes. I really had to.
I could see you stretching.
I was like, I was bursting at the seams.
A lot to get into.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into. But I am going to throw the mic over here to Kimball, and he's going to get us started on our topic today.
All right. So, President Benson said, "The Lord has declared that before the second coming of Christ, it will be necessary to destroy the secret works of darkness in order to preserve the land of Zion, the Americas." We are in the middle of a very strange climate culturally, where fellow members of the church who are being told continually by Scripture, pay attention to when you have secret combinations among you, because that's a really bad time for you. Please pay attention. And these same church members are like, okay, that's cool. Well, none of them's going on, so I guess we're good.
Yep.
And holy cow, their heads are in the sand.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of things in our day, but I kind of want to get a basis of what a secret combination truly is. It starts with Cain and Abel. The very first secret combination was Satan saying to Cain, "I will give you gain. I will give you your brother's stuff if you kill him." That plotting is the definition of a secret combination. Cain kills his brother. He becomes Master Mayhem. He essentially covenants with Satan to keep it a secret, as well as other people. Anyone who finds out, it continues. And this is not simply a one-time thing. It's actually really cool that the Book of Enoch goes into this so much.
Mm-hmm.
The Book of Abraham, the translation from nothing of the Book of Moses that Joseph Smith did, truly those works are absolutely, proof evidence that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that you have the Book of Enoch, which more accurately the Book of the Giants version, come out 100+ years later with the same themes that did not exist in the Bible and did exist in the Joseph Smith translation.
That was the Slavic version, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the Slavic version.
Mm-hmm.
And as this Book of Enoch surfaces, it establishes as evidenced these principles of Joseph, talking about that it wasn't just Cain slew Abel because he wanted his stuff, or he was jealous about his
offering.
Mm-hmm. It was a secret combination. Well, those secret combinations have been alive on earth with the gospel. There's dispensations. There's dispensation heads. There's rise and falls of membership levels. There's the great apostasy. That didn't happen with secret combinations.
No.
They've been continual, progressive, and rife throughout history. It's the stealing of the garment by Ham for his son Nimrod. It's the casting of Joseph into Egypt with that same garment being taken, the coat of many colors. It's the combination against of Babylon against Judah. I mean, it's the definition of the Tower of Babel was an attempt to make everybody uniform under a specific code that gave the leaders power over everybody. As the Book of Mormon plays out, it's the most clear in explaining these secret combinations and how they work. You have these Gadianton robbers that come together as a secret combination. They get their code, if you will, their secret handshakes, their secret symbols, their secret words, whatever. They got it from the Jaredites, actually. They found those records. As they begin their secret combination to get gain, what do? And any of us, it's so easy to conceptualize, how do you get power through a secret agreement between people? You need people in positions of power who scratch each other's backs. Yep. You need the politicians, the judges, the lawyers, the leaders of armies. Everybody in power needs to combine their resources, their influence, and especially murder to get gain. Yep. That's the root of all of it.
It's the crown jewel of the Gadianton robber, right? It is.
Yep.
And the Gadianton robbers threaten the Nephites and the Lamanites who joined with them and said, hey, how about you just come join with us? Be partakers of our secret works.
Be our brethren.
Be our brethren and do like us. And essentially what they're offering is, hey, come join us in murdering people to get gain. And the Nephites reject it, and it ends up in war. Well, these secret combinations, though squelched, don't go away. They resurface. As Moroni and Mormon are wrapping up the Book of Mormon, they emphasize with the Book of Ether that those same secret combinations is what took down the entire Jaredite civilization, or the Adena.
Yep.
And that same secret combination is what is taking out the Nephites. And then we are warned, because this is a book of prophecy for our day, that when those secret combinations come among you, awake to the awful situation you're in. But hey, we don't have any in our day, so we're good, right?
We're good, man.
Yeah. Well, you look at the Book of Mormon and Moroni. He includes ether in it, and obviously there's multiple purposes to that. But it's almost like when he gives his comments, he's like, this is here because the Lord commanded me that you would see this and know what it is and be able to cast it off. And he's not talking to his people. He's talking to us.
Yes.
Especially, and I would say pointedly to our time specifically. Yes, it's been valid to everybody. The saints, early saints definitely dealt with secret combinations, but more pointedly now, talking about how Christ will not be able to come until these things are taken care of, and we are on the precipice of that.
I think I'm glad that you went into that, because I think it's very important for us to understand that, and I don't know that many of us do. Like, there's a lot of people who are awake to the fact that there are secret combinations in our day. It's not just a thing that we learn about in primary and it existed amongst them. Like, think about all of the records that Moroni had to peruse through, and Mormon, in order to put this book together. And we know that it's not even
rooms full of plates.
Caves, literal caves, right?
Yeah.
I just barely actually went and happened to read into some things about them talking, like Oliver Cowdery and stuff, talking about them actually going into the caves, right? Like a couple times, where they said, there's the sword of Laban was in there in the cave. There was, literal caverns, I guess would be a better word for it.
Yeah.
But we know that from the scriptures that we do have in the Book of Mormon that we don't even have 1,000th part of some of these things.
They mention that like 8 times.
All the time. Yeah, they really do. Like they
Trying to hammer it home.
It's funny that they make a point of it. They're like, look, we can't even, I can't even put a thousandth part of what we have in here, but here's the cliff notes, right?
I mean, when they make like 4 or 5, 6 generations pass away in a few chapters.
Exactly. When they kind of peruse past a couple kings and, what I mean, stuff like that. But thinking about that, really, the Book of Mormon is, even though we have these different books, it's really written and narrated by Mormon and Moroni.
Yeah.
Right? They are the ones, it's basically in their narration that the Book of Mormon is given. Mm-hmm. So everything that's in there was a commandment to those two, mostly Mormon, right?
Yeah.
To put in there. And knowing that, it's like, okay, so let's go to these war chapters in the Book of Mormon. Let's go to Ether and stuff, because Ether almost seems like an afterthought. It was like
it does.
He was like, hey, and you can see where he'd be ultra hyper focused on his own situation because he's watching his own civilization get obliterated.
Yeah, like he's living in the aftermath of the secret combinations.
Exactly.
Right? And I remember the first time reading through the Book of Mormon, you get to that point, right? And it feels like you're on the decrescendo, right? You're on the way out of the story. And then he throws Ether in there, and it's almost like...
It's jarring.
It is jarring, yeah. And you have to wonder, why would he put that in there?
Yeah, as a narrative, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
If you were writing a novel, you wouldn't write it that way.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't. It's very interesting because it's he's like, hey, we're at the end of my civilization. Wait. Let me go back to the people who were here before us and tell you a little bit about what happened to them in one book, right?
Yeah.
And we get this very...
Flashback.
Yeah, flashback. We get this very condensed version of what happened, right?
It's super condensed.
Super condensed of this entire civilizations. We don't know as much about them as we do about the Nephites because we have so much about the Nephites, But then we see the exact same pattern, and I think that is what is important for us because, and I didn't know this until, I think I mentioned this before, that the Book of Mormon is a blueprint for us.
Yep.
We are literally following in the footsteps of the Book of Mormon people.
It's being repeated.
Which makes sense because we're the third civilization on this land. Major civilization, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless you count Adam's people, then we're number 4.
Yeah, we're number 4.
But either way, however you count it, right?
Yeah.
The story is the same across all of those civilizations. But that, and what Kimball just talked about, that is the major underlying theme, right? Is that every single one of those civilizations was just like infected with this stuff. And it really is jarring to me when I try to talk to people about this stuff, and they look at you like you're a nut.
Yeah.
They're like, what? What?
Yeah.
Conspiracy? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well,
it's like a dirty word.
It has been made a dirty word.
Yeah.
By the FBI.
Yep. FBI, CIA.
Yep.
We're conditioned currently and it's so rife in our education system, in politics, in especially social media. You're continually told that, hey, any conspiracy thought, it makes you look crazy.
Yeah, you're a loon.
Every Hollywood movie paints that guy who's on the radio spouting off crazy things about aliens, and it paints them as a crazy dude. Six-legged freaks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, every one of these movies has that, right?
Yep.
And then there's the one, I can't remember the name of it, but the dude who plays Harvey Dent in Batman.
Aaron Eckhart.
Yes, the one he's in recently where he's talking about people being computer chipped, and he's on the radio doing that kind of thing. That's a good one for if you want to get a little bit of a conspiracy theory ramp up.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
But this whole idea of turning conspiracy theories against us as, oh, you think it's a conspiracy? You're crazy.
Yeah.
Again, President Benson said it is not, what he's seeing is not conspiracy theory, it is conspiracy fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty up close.
Oh, yeah. He had a very close view of government. He knew.
Yeah. Your buddy did a good Small and Simple Things.
Eula Berry. Love you, buddy.
So I want to quote Ayn Rand real quick. When you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing. When you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods, but in favors. When you see that men get richer by graft and by poll than by work. And your laws don't protect you against them, but protects them against you. Mm-hmm. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. We are facing that doom.
We're doomed.
Yeah, that describes us.
Yep.
That describes now.
That's a
Right
almost
now.
That's a
That describes 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a 60-plus-year-old quote.
It
Yeah,
describes 100 years ago.
exactly. Yeah, I'm being under
Yeah.
on that one quite a bit.
Well, and it is really funny because we as members of the church, especially the initial experience of a brand new convert, you're really flooded with all the positive.
Yeah,
I think it's the same
probably for
way.
a good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the same way with my education about America. And it must be engineered this way because then when they finally confront you with, no, look at all these bad things that have happened, America's a horrible place. That engineering of a wake up to you is meant to turn you anti-American.
Yeah.
And it works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it is also true. America has had a ton of really evil stuff done in its name. For example, the extermination order against Mormons.
Yeah. We really paralleled the Native Americans.
Yeah.
We really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got kicked out of their land, and we went right along with
Yep.
them just a little later. And over, and even when we came to Utah as a sovereign nation
Yep.
of the
Deseret.
the United States didn't care.
Nope.
They bought the land from Mexico that Mexico didn't own, and then sent an army to Utah to overthrow the
Yeah.
people of Deseret.
Yeah, they subjected us.
That was a eye opening. Like, just so everyone knows, Kimball sent us a video to look at
Yes.
this stuff. But that was eye opening to me because I think I'd always, and it's probably because every church history movie we've ever watched, right? And then they got to Salt Lake and everything was fine, right? Yeah. You know, and it just seemed
And
like
the people rejoiced.
yeah, exactly. I think I just always had it in my brain. We got here and things were fine until we got
Yeah.
to a modern era. But before Brigham Young's even in the ground, they're already trying to be usurped again.
Yeah.
They're already trying to have the government take control again.
And they did.
And
Yeah.
they did.
The United States government took over a coup of a foreign nation.
Yep.
And it's never painted that way. Our entire education system teaches, oh, no, we wanted to be part of America again.
Yeah.
And our church leaders, John Taylor, was like, screw America. America sucks.
We ain't going back.
Because, and rightfully so, all of these church members were like, we believe in the Constitution. Look how America's apostatized from it.
They apostatized.
I think that's a good point too. Like Joseph, I didn't know this, but Joseph, he petitioned every state looking for asylum.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, and they all rejected him. They all turned him down. And so I think it was that Rod Meldrum thing he did with Hannah Stoddard.
Yes.
But they said, yeah, the Civil War was basically recompense for the fact that the nation literally denied God.
Yep.
They literally turned their back on God and sent them back into the Utah territory.
Yeah. Well, and then you continue it forward, right?
Yeah.
As much as you could place secret combinations as other events, the Illuminati or other kinds of things, the founding of America really was a birth of freedom.
Yeah.
And it was an escaping from those kinds of secret combinations. It was a rejection of them, of the king, of the corruption of governments and churches seeking to usurp men's rights. Mm-hmm. As we set up men having rights again, of course, wickedness came back into power, as it always seems to.
It's frustrating as heck.
Yes.
Looking at it from a historical perspective, that is frustrating.
Yep.
And again, like I say, in Utah in particular, we lost our right to vote. Everybody complains about right to vote, right?
Yep.
Nobody knows it better than the Mormon pioneers that they literally couldn't elect their governors.
Yep. In their own state that we set up. We left, built up our own place, and they came and take it from us.
And every one of those governors was conspiring to undermine the church, to eliminate it, we're really lucky because people tried to pass legislation that made being a member of the church an elimination of all of your civil rights.
Yep.
Those laws literally were tried to pass through Congress.
Yep.
And fortunately failed. Yep. Or else we wouldn't be talking to you today.
Yep. Small and simple things. Making it happen.
But because of this, there has been that conspiracy, and it really has centered around fighting against the Church of God, the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Because Utah had its own kingdom of God. It was the church, and the government was the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. And that got, for all intents and purposes, it was squashed.
Right.
And they did it through education. They did it through, again, this is going back to that Defending Utah video. Great, guys. We'll put a link to it, I bet.
Yeah,
totally.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But,
done.
But this guy does all this research, really cool stuff into how in Utah, everything was paid for education. It was taught that you were sacrificing for your children to pay for their education to go to school. And that was a virtuous thing.
Right.
And it is a virtuous thing. Free stuff usually isn't virtuous. And in come wave after wave of people opening free schools. And most of the time they were contrary religions, and they would teach, and they would go back to their congregations and brag about how they're corrupting the Mormon kids.
Yep.
You can't persuade the lunatic parents, but you can get their kids away.
Yep, that soft plastic mind of a child, right?
Yep.
And so, my ranting on public education could go
I know, right? Yeah.
years. We're so engineered.
I think we're on that precipice right now because the same thing, that same exact formula is happening right now.
Yeah,
it's just
it's been going on ever since Woodrow Wilson.
It's just switched from being non-denominational or whatever, religion to now just straight up Luciferian doctrine.
Yeah. Yes. They X out all Christianity, all worship of God.
We're all in the same boat now.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's, if anything, that should show the widespread nature of this, right? Mm-hmm. And I imagine you guys are in the same boat. The most frustrating thing I get with this when I talk to most people, I have a good friend at work who's on the same wavelength with me, and we vent to each other.
Yeah.
But most people just don't get it. They don't see it, or they'll admit that it exists, but that they don't think it's as rampant as it is.
Yeah. And
I have turned completely around on this, and I think that's the majority of the ruling body of what we exist under today in the world, not just United States. The entire world is almost encompassed in this.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. It is surrounding us. And it's like, to get people to see it is so frustrating because it's been so slow. These small, they make small little changes that are so inconsequential that you not going along with the change makes you look like a bigot, right? It makes you look unagreeable.
Right.
But it's just like Amalickiah with Lahontai. Just come down a little bit.
Yep.
Just come down a little bit. And before you know it, you've taken 10,000 steps to the bottom, right?
We're fixed in our determination, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we were born where the system was already failing, right? We don't even, we're predisposed because of how we came into the world.
And you don't conceptualize it because you're living in the middle of it.
Exactly,
You don't relate to the 100, 200 year prior person who was actually free. You just realize that, oh, hey, I have to go get a fishing license.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that everything that is wrong, that the government tells you is evil, that you can then go get a permission by giving them money in order to do, isn't actually evil.
Yes.
Is a right that they are stripping you of.
Yep. It's like that buddy at work, he said all the time, he's like, our forefathers, they've been shooting a long time ago.
Yeah,
you know? They wouldn't have never gotten this far. But it's because they knew they couldn't get us in big leaps.
Yeah.
Because we would fight against it.
Yeah.
And so that's what they've been slowly working from the inside, just little half steps, quarter steps at a time, to the point that it is so rampant we don't even see the net anymore.
It's because the people who are executing it aren't the mastermind of it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing people don't connect the dots. Is that this is a plan of Satan. He's just as aware of the timeline as anybody, and he knows the path of progression and of least resistance and highest success of corrupting God's children.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what he's executing. There's a lot of videos I've seen that allude to this, but don't give a lot of the very specific details you need to really know what is actually going on. Khrushchev talking about how we're going to take over America without firing a shot.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to corrupt you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see those videos all the time. I see people quoting it all the time. And it basically goes over your head, oh yeah, those communists, what are they going to do?
Right.
But there's a video I watched of this guy who was a KGB member who defected.
Eerie.
Yes, Eerie. Who talks about James Bond is so much hype. He talked about how 10% maybe of the KGB was anything espionage.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was straight indoctrination.
Yep.
And basically inviting over people who they knew they could condition. And they would get them to Russia, and they'd keep them boozed up the entire time they were there. That was his job specifically. And they would show them the best time and how communism is so great. Yeah. And they'd just hit them within all these indoctrinations, conditioning them, and then send them back to their home countries with this idea, hey, look at how awesome Marxism is. And they would destroy their own nations. Right. And they knew, these communists, KGB members knew, that process takes about 20 years because you have to start with a younger generation. But in 20 years, you'll have potential for government overthrows. And then in 5 years, a 5-year period, you can actually cause a revolution, and on and on. They did not work in what we're used to politically as these 4-year cycles. But our 4-year cycles are, they're just window dressing. They are, Oz behind the...
It's a puppet show.
Yes.
Yep.
They're all secret combination people.
Yeah.
As evidenced by Ezra's eagle prophecy, which goes back again to that first president of the Ezra's eagle prophecy, as we lay out the numbers, is Herbert Hoover.
Yep.
So why Herbert Hoover? As President Benson talked about in his Attacking Communism and Secret Combinations talk and conference, he talked, and I guess you only see this in the video, not the transcript.
Right.
That he said, hey, everybody needs to go read this book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And in that, it lays out where this secret combination is beginning in America. Mm-hmm. And it begins, or at least is perpetuated, with an organization called the League of Nations. Mm-hmm. And who was, I think, the first member of the League of Nations to become a U.S. president? Herbert Hoover. Mm-hmm. So you have a prophet saying, read this book about secret combinations. The book saying secret combinations is League of Nations, which eventually became the UN.
Right.
And then Herbert Hoover becoming that first Ezra's eagle, that first corrupted president. And every president since is one of those eagle feathers, right?
Yep.
Well, and what's crazy about that, too, is watching how that... Because even, like, it's not like it just happened all at once right then, right? Like, there was foreign influence as well.
Yeah, it built up to it.
And it just infiltrated, and it became, like, they basically had to grow people here in America who then supported what was going on overseas.
Woodrow Wilson.
Exactly. And then it became a global thing with homegrown people here.
Yes. Which also, again, it's so deep how these roots go. But the man that Joseph Smith saw a discourse on socialism from was the man who trained Marx and Engels, was the man who originated that doctrine of communism, which Marx made famous.
Right.
And that same man taught a man who became a member of the church. I think it was Boone, right?
God.
Is it Godby?
Godby.
Oh, Boone was the guy who taught.
Yeah, I think
Godby.
Boone. Yeah, Boone.
So
yeah, Boone's
Robert
one that
Robert
taught Godby,
Owen.
Yeah,
Robert Owen trained Karl Marx, right?
There you
that's
go.
it. There
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, Owen.
Got all these names. I'm trying to.
I know, right? William Godby.
So, Godby was trained by. Say the name again.
Owen.
Owen.
Robert Owen.
So Robert Owen trained Karl Marx, trained Engels, and
Yeah.
trained this Godby
Exactly,
guy who
yeah.
became a member of our church. And Godby was like, "Oh, I'm a total." At the time, they didn't use the word communist.
Yeah.
He used the name of the guy who trained him.
Right.
He was that kind of a Mormon,
Mm-hmm.
and he was trying to use that kind of influence in the church. Joseph Smith saw that sermon, and he said, "I don't believe the doctrine." He said, "Socialism, not a true doctrine," as it began.
Yep.
But that doctrine was pervasive and influenced every culture around the world. And that guy in the church was the guy who founded the Salt Lake Tribune.
Yep.
Not surprised.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Is anyone like this,
Everyone in the
Salt Lake
audience is
Tribune?
going, "Oh yeah."
Anyone who's had their thumb anywhere close knows the Salt Lake Tribune. That might be one of the few places people might admit
I
secret
know, right?
combinations
Yeah,
outright.
exactly.
Well, and again, like we could get super into, and the Defending Utah video does, like the Utah-specific stuff. But Marx and Engels and their influence is just as pervasive throughout the rest of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, their doctrine was treated like a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler put Marx on a railroad car and sent him to Russia. They welded the car shut so he couldn't get out because Hitler knew, I'm sending him to Russia and that will destroy their nation.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it caused all kinds of the overthrow, basically, of their nation.
Yeah, the
No, it's
turmoil.
crazy that really was, like, Marxism was the counter chess move to the Restoration.
Yep.
It was.
It really was.
Yep.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was Satan building
Yeah.
evil in opposition to the
Yep.
rise of
He had to do something of equal, magnitude, and that was it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, without it, we'd be in a very different place.
Yeah.
Right now.
Oh, yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
go back to that podcast, but that's the foundation of a lot of these things. It's Satan's doctrine, just with a different name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the fruits thereof, right? The fruits of the church is billions and billions of donations, charitable, everything, service rendered, all that kind of stuff, growth of faith and temple work and all that amazing stuff the church does. And in contrast, Marxism, communism, all that kills hundreds of millions of people around the globe.
Take.
And it's doing that to take people's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we are seeing no less than that exact plan executed in our day. That same principle is being executed through the UN, through the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
All these things are the literal secret combination of our time. Look no further than how every one of those organizations and how all of the heads of our government, both sides of the political aisle, are tied with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
They are part of a satanic cult.
Yep.
And this
I can't believe Huntsman was on that list, by the way.
yes, Huntsman.
I can't believe that.
It doesn't-
That was incredible.
It doesn't surprise me.
Junior, not
Yeah.
senior.
Yes, Junior. And every one of these guys, the secret combination, it's a demand on you to be part of it, that you commit certain acts. You're not qualified to be part of the secret combination unless you murder for gain.
Yeah. I mean, it mirrors church ordinances because Satan can't do anything original. He reconstitutes the idea of performing ordinances and making covenants.
Yes.
That they just do horrific things
It's a mockery.
to accomplish that. And murder being chief among them, but also how they accomplish the murder and who they do the murder to. It becomes more and more horrifying as you descend into the ranks.
Yes.
Well, and it really does. It goes, if you go back and do a historical study with this lens on, with these glasses on, right? You see it with Nimrod. You see it with Nebuchadnezzar. You see it with all of these monarchs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the exact same principles being applied, right? It is all about power.
Yeah, the consolidation of power, and then the protection and acquiring of more.
Yes, exactly. And it's
usurping the rights of the citizenry.
It's about doing that and deifying oneself, right? Creating that ruling class.
Well, and they did literally deify themselves. They gave themselves celestial imagery. The crown on the head was given by Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it was I am a god because of my position.
Pharaoh.
Yeah. And where does the crown go back to, people? Where it originally started, right? It's a perversion of what the truth is.
Exactly. Instead of everybody being a king.
Yeah.
No, I am the king. You know what I mean? I am the way.
You are all my slaves.
And you are all my slaves. Exactly.
I think if you were to look today, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but like 80% of the world's wealth is in the hands of like 3%, right? Or probably even less than that.
Yeah,
I think I'm overshooting that by quite a bit.
Yeah.
And just ask yourself, does that happen naturally? Does that make any sense that would happen without some sort of interference, right?
Yes.
And that in many ways, that's the power right today, because like Satan says, money can buy you anything in this world, right?
Yeah.
And so that becomes the golden standard for his minions. And so you look at that. I mean, if no other evidence you had, and people, that's willingly admitted. You know, you can find that on Google, you know, and right there you're seeing evidence of the secret combinations at work.
Yeah.
So again, back to this founder of the Salt Lake Tribune, he founded something else as well. He founded something called the Alta Club, which
I hadn't heard about this.
I hadn't even heard nothing about it.
Yep.
Right?
Probably on purpose.
I hated the football team, Alta. You know what I mean? We hated playing them.
Yep. But this Alta Club, from its inception, was anti-Mormon in its roots.
Yeah.
It was founded around people with political power getting together and 100%, prostitution, drugs, alcohol, through prohibition and slavery. Yeah, to this day, they still are participating in those things. And they specifically are engineering their group to subterfuge of Mormons. I mean, it is strictly an attack on the church.
Yep.
Every governor, the 12 that we couldn't elect as Mormons, and every governor since that we did what we were allowed to elect, have been Alta Club members.
Right.
Including most of the senators.
Yep.
Including Mitt Romney.
Yeah, that one's not
That's
surprising.
not surprising to anybody anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Maybe it used to.
And including Mike Lee.
Yeah.
And you know how we have to pause here and talk about how effective and smart that was.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Romney was running for president, and they couldn't find really anything on him.
Yeah.
He was pretty dang squeaky clean.
Oh yeah, he was squeaky clean.
He was a perfect candidate.
The only reason he lost is because he wasn't black. I mean, let's be honest, right?
And there was probably some
there was Dominion election.
Yeah, there was some Dominion election fraud going on, right?
Well,
Dominion's
now,
been used for the last couple decades.
Right.
Knowing what we know now, it was probably projected purposefully to happen that way.
Yes.
That's why polling has such a hard time predicting results, is because they don't know how much they're going to have to cheat
Exactly. Exactly.
Otherwise, they'd get the polling dead on every time.
But I mean, look at, like, and maybe I'm the only one here, I don't know, but I remember thinking, like, this guy is a man of God. You know what I mean?
I was thrilled at the
campaigned for him.
concept.
Yeah.
I ran as a delegate. and campaigned
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that year. Yeah.
I remember thinking, like, if there was ever a guy to get us out of a mess, this is him, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying I 100% know, but if I'm a betting man, looking at some things, it's like, I think that he is mixed up with some bad Gadian level stuff.
He openly said in an interview that, hey, I I don't think there's been any revelation from God since Moses.
Yep.
Yep.
That was pretty
and
dang
yeah,
interesting.
and I heard the words, and I went back and looked at it because I wanted to make sure I didn't misremember. He's openly stated that the highest members of our church are for abortion. Like, he thinks our church is pro-abortion, or at least
Right.
he's declared it, right? And you just look at that plus whatever else he's done, where whenever he wants to do anything he wants to do, he declares religion, and he claims that was what he needed to do.
So did Harry Reid.
Yeah.
It's obvious. I think I don't understand when people don't see it now.
Yeah.
How much he's basically paid up with the people,
Yeah.
the right people, quote unquote,
Yes.
to be where he's at.
And it shouldn't be surprising. Like, you go back to Paul's day, what was the entire purpose of the epistles? Why do those even exist? Because people started to do crazy, weird crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you leave us to our own devices.
Instantly,
Long
Exactly.
they would corrupt the gospel.
Instantly. I mean, it happened like that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, in their time, they were in real time having to write letters and be like, guys, what are you doing? You know what I
Yep.
mean? Because we see that, when people get that little bit of power, there is something intoxicating about it to the point where they start to say, you know what, this religion thing is cool, but man, this power, you know?
What if we were to do this with
Yeah.
it? You know?
We'll just make these little compromises.
You know,
they've-
it's steadying the ark, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes it's from a good position, but you're trying to steady the ark,
Right.
And you're trying to take control unto
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
Well, and they've figured out how to manipulate. When we talked about manipulation last time, they've figured that out to a T. But they use this subtle manipulation of language and of guilt and of media to condition everybody into just going along, and it's just one step at a time, moving the Overton window. If you're, awesome book if you want to read that.
Yep.
But that idea of that Overton window, where you just slowly shift where that window is, you can change the perspective.
Centimeters at a time. Yep.
And that's what we've been getting forever. It's just that right now they're going full shift, and it's super obvious.
Yeah.
It wasn't super obvious 100 years ago,
Yeah.
but it's blatantly obvious now. And then again, back to these secret combinations, because we've talked Wicked World all over the place, but
Right.
it's this conspiring
Yes.
that is so evil. There is a group of people, oh god, I forget the name, in government. They're limited to 200. You only get in by invitation. You can only get in if a member dies.
Right.
And they are the most secretive club. Supposedly all they do is celebrate the anniversary of Robert E. Lee's birth. But again, this defending Utah
Which
guy,
Obama was invited.
oh yeah, he's part of it.
Yep.
I mean, the list of who's part of it is crazy. But they, so this defending Utah guy was able to find the only book in existence that lays out what they do. And they believe that they are the power structure that's been behind every war and every victor of every war since Egypt. They believe they are the equivalent of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is something to I heard Cleon Skousen in a completely separate thing, not even talking about this stuff, but just talking about how China was, after World War II, China had written up a constitution of China. It had divided itself into states. It was ready to implement an exact replica of the United States Constitution, just based for Chinese people, where they were going to say, okay, we're going to do what they did.
Yeah.
Because it worked.
Because it worked. Yeah, obviously it worked. And America pulled back support and allowed them to be taken over by the Communist Party.
Yep.
Yeah.
They purposely made that happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's pure secret combination
Yes.
right there. Right?
Absolutely.
That's the MO. Perfect right
The
there.
members of this club today, though, I mean, it would creep you out. It's Barack Obama and it's George Bush.
Yep.
Yep.
It is all these high heads of state, all these presidents, and as of the death of a recent member, the new head of that club is Mitt Romney. He is the head of a secret combination.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just mind-blowing to have these things revealed to show how these people behind the scenes are manipulating towards evil, but out openly they're in sheep's clothing. They're
Right.
constitutionalists. I love America.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where this Defending Utah group is so cool, where they've actually exposed some people who have been these outspoken conservatives, and then they pick apart their legislation and they find this guy's trying to implement Agenda 21 in Utah, and they've been able to get people unelected and
They even mentioned Mike Lee.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Mike Lee's one of those guys where they're like, he's super constitutional in everything he says, and then and they laid out like 10 things that he's done that have been massively corrupt
Right.
movements.
Well, and I always thought that it was very strange because he and Trey Gowdy, who was, I believe, the North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Senator, who was, they were like pit bulls, man. They looked like, I mean, they would just go after people and on things and would not let go.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, without any reason, said, "No, we're done. We're done." Even though wildly popular, wildly successful, Trey Gowdy is now a Fox News affiliate, right? Does stuff for Fox. Mike Lee, exact same thing. He's a
Yes.
Fox News guy. I always thought, what the
Jason
heck?
Chaffetz.
Yeah,
Same thing.
I thought, why? What? Like, why would you do that? Now I'm starting to hear this kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, like
Starts to make sense.
start to make sense. Exactly.
They put
Also,
on a
makes
good
you think we're a
front.
lot more screwed.
Oh, yes, we are.
We're in trouble.
And that's the hard part, is that this stuff has to come to light and be defeated.
Yeah.
So, if President Benson's right, how in the world do we, in our current setting, wake up anybody
Yeah.
to, you're living in the middle of a secret combination and the people you like in government are also part of it? Like, watching that video was trippy because same kind of thing. I thought, hey, Mike Lee's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
I've listened to so many things he said. He's great.
Yeah.
I've even, referenced his books.
Absolutely.
And to hear that, wow, he's done some really shady stuff.
Yep.
It's creepy.
Well, and we all kind of have to have our wake up moments, Like I remember seeing the Out of Shadows documentary, which I was already kind of on.
I was wondering if we were going to go into this.
I don't know how you talk about secret combinations.
I know,
and don't,
right? Yeah.
Just because it's such a good source for that, and I don't know much, what else I can point to, that's like that, where it hits on the fact that the secret combinations are so ingrained in our entertainment, but also in our news and everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where there's power to be gained over people psychologically, monetarily. It talks about that stuff, and you watch it, and I think for some people there might be this inclination to be like, I don't know, but for me it was like, yep, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I can see that, and I think you almost have to give place for it, right? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see it. I think it's just so easy to turn on the news and think that you're being told truth, because that's how it's been done for so long.
Why would they lie to you?
I know, right?
They've got your best interest at heart.
But I want to give the challenge to everyone listening who isn't doing this. When you watch the news at night and they say something, ask yourself, is it really that way?
And also compare it.
Yeah.
Not only across the country, across the world, and look for keywords, look for phrases.
Yeah.
And it's spooky. It'll spook you out.
Yeah.
You really have to be willing and proactive to see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you have to be following people on Facebook that are being censored.
Right.
Yeah.
But the times where all of a sudden they're posting a video and every news organization across the country is reading the same
They're
script.
parroting each other.
Yeah, literally reading the same script.
Yeah.
When Twitter is having thousands and thousands of bots post the same COVID memes.
Right.
When you have, or COVID's, not memes, but statements of like, I just went to the hospital for COVID, and it's word for word, oh, I'm doing so bad, and oh, these dang people who don't wear their masks, I know that's where I got,
Yeah.
So me being just willing to open that third eye of, okay, what else is going on?
Right.
Yes.
I'm seeing all these influences. We have the biggest push in world history for vaccination, and it's being pushed by people who are openly cool with getting rid of some of the population.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about how Bill Gates is a great guy and stuff, and it's like, you know what? Maybe he is on whatever level, but he did some really crappy stuff to a bunch of African people
Oh,
Yeah.
he's straight
with
up
their
evil.
with the vaccinations.
I would not be surprised if he's the Antichrist. The dude is banned from India
Yeah.
because he caused more cases of polio from his vaccination
Mm-hmm.
of polio than polio caused polio.
Yep.
Yep.
And they banned him from that country. He has done so many immoral things, sterilizing women through
Yep.
his vaccines. And he's made more money doing the vaccines than he ever did with the computers.
Oh,
Which
absolutely.
also he stole. He did not
Yeah.
invent.
Well, and his dad was on the board of Planned Parenthood. He was one of the founding members
Yeah.
of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
He's been a eugenicist his whole life.
This is generational stuff.
Yeah. And he is entirely invested in Jeffrey Epstein. And not having those secrets come to life,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
The more I hear about that, the more I'm starting to wonder if he is still alive.
I think so.
I mean, you know what I mean? I have no proof of that. That's completely me throwing my tie over the shoulder.
Well, and I'll give you the scriptural reason why, right? When they make the covenant, and it says this in the Book of Mormon, when they make the covenant, they covenant to help each other,
Right.
out of the situations.
No
They
matter
basically,
what.
Yeah, they covenant to evade justice
Mm-hmm.
at all costs, right? And this is people who have no automobiles,
Right.
no airplanes, no machine guns,
Right. No
no credit cards.
technology.
Yeah, but they were able to make it happen.
Right.
Right. You look at today, and how much easier would it be in our system, right? You just
Well-
got to be paid up with the right people.
Yeah.
So I do not believe he's dead. I
Yeah.
believe he suicided himself. So now he can do whatever he wants openly. and freely.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
The recording of his area got turned off. The people who were doing the security at the time were paid off, later admitted that they falsified their records.
Right.
And he's just suddenly gone. Like, how many people need to watch any CSI movies or shows to know you can fake a body at an autopsy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's not hard nowadays.
No. But
Especially when you have people in your pocket at the coroner's office.
Yeah.
You know.
And you have unlimited money.
Yes,
these people,
yes.
they're doing event after event after event to try to create these false flags of, no, it actually happened this way. And one of the greatest examples recently is this lead up to the insurrection, right? So right before that, we had Governor Whitmer, supposedly a kidnapping plot against her.
Right.
And as it's now being discovered, what happened is these guys were like, man, she's a horrible governor. And there was this confidential informant to the FBI who was like, oh man, we should totally take her out. And they're like, oh yeah, I guess. I don't think we would even know how to do it. Oh, I know some buddies. And he brought in,
The
they ended
FBI.
up being 12 dudes. And most everybody else backed out.
Right.
So it was 12 dudes who were confidential informants, which usually means they were actually FBI.
They're agents. Yeah.
They're agents. 12 dudes who knew everything and were fomenting it and were instigating it all. And a couple guys who were along for the ride. And those couple guys are in prison. As all these other guys get to have credit for exposing this plot against Governor Whitmer, right? That same language is happening with that insurrection at the Capitol, where Trump didn't even start his speech before they had already started attacking the building. There were people in uniforms, police uniforms, that were letting Antifa members through that were also dressed as MAGA. And those members went up to the Capitol, started bashing the building. People who were actual Trump supporters tried to stop them and were attacked by them.
Yep.
And these people, they have full-on videos of these guys as Antifa members, and then at this rally wearing MAGA gear.
Yep.
And you have proof of the actual cops who were letting them in. We're now up to 4 cops from the Capitol Police who have suicided themselves.
That was spooky because I mean, I've been watching and paying close attention to that since it happened, obviously.
Yeah.
And watching the video footage, which has been scrubbed from YouTube hardcore.
Oh, yeah. You cannot find it on
You can't
YouTube.
find it over there, but if you go to Rumble, you can. You see them just go, oh, there you go, come on in. It was weird.
They were telling them where to go to take pictures.
Exactly.
You have in Utah John Sullivan, who was a big Antifa leader, who was paid $70,000 by CNN to take video out there.
Yeah.
Taking video of himself wearing MAGA gear, bragging about how cool it felt to do this. And, you know, he got his money confiscated and they're still trying to figure out how to charge him. Yeah. But there are people who, to this day, are in solitary confinement who, quote unquote, participated in that. People who just entered the building after those guys. They were the ones who were entrapped.
Right.
And these people are being treated absolutely Holocaust level imprisonment.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile...
Solitary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 6+ months.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine
solitary.
that. Yeah.
Meanwhile, and some of these people have died in prison. And again, meanwhile, you have countless confidential informants listed as the FBI and CIA and the now Nancy Pelosi instigated inspection of it is being executed. They need to have an investigation, not because they need to know what's going on, because they have to cover up what they chose to do.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to cover up their false flag.
Yeah.
The same way that the 9/11 Commission was not about finding out what happened. It was about covering up that Saudi Arabia was involved.
Pushing a narrative.
Yeah, and that's what they get someone to come in to investigate, but then they lay the false trail as they quote unquote investigate.
Yes.
And you create all of these documents, these touchstones that seem to be source material for what they want you to believe, right? So then you move forward, and people, you get on the news, and they're quoting these documents, right? And that's where they get their sources, and it makes them look credible. It makes people look like they have something that they don't really have.
Yeah.
I think it was because some people in the audience are looking at this and they're going,
I'm sure.
You know what I mean? And I've been there, man. Like this has been a journey for me to get to.
But I get it. People don't want to be hoodwinked. I
get that. Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Because you're painted as, well, you believe in aliens. Oh, hey, UFOs are real.
Yeah, by the way.
That's not the crazy anymore.
I know, right? But it's like something that has stood out to me with everything that I've ever gone into with this stuff is when people are saying, look, don't trust me. Do your own research.
Yeah.
Anybody that says that automatically gets a little green light in my book because I'm like, okay, I've listened to other sources through this entire pandemic that we've had, and I don't hear that from them. I hear this is what it is. This, and it's like,
listen to me.
Yeah, it's ramming it down your throat, right?
Since when has the side that bans speech, burns books, etc., been on the good side?
Yeah.
When did Hitler ever say, "Do your own research"? Right? It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when people like, and I will drop names here, people like Glenn Beck, you know what I mean? People like Ben Shapiro, they're like, guys, please.
Go look at this.
Please look at this. Please do your own research into this. That automatically, to me, it bumps it up a notch. It's like, okay. And when we were, when you sent that video or that YouTube clip from the, what are they named? Defending Utah Radio?
Yep.
They do the same thing. They're like, guys, look into it. You know what I mean? Here's the evidence. Now you look into it. That automatically is like, that's like my mantra now. You know what I mean? And I want to parrot that to our audience. It's like, guys, don't take our words for it. You know what I mean? go in there and like we'll put the link in there. Just check it out, see what it has to say, and then look into it, research it, right?
Yeah.
Because as I don't know about you guys, but like I took notes as I was watching that, and so I usually don't do this, but this one was fascinating
Because it's so close to home.
It was so close, exactly. It was so close to home, so I started to just Google some things as they were talking.
Yeah.
I'd pause it, I'd Google it. I wound up looking into the Skull and Bones group
Of Harvard.
yeah. Or Yale,
Yale.
whatever.
Yale.
Is it
That's
Yale?
what it
Yeah,
is.
Yale.
I think it starts at Yale, but I think it's kind of at this point kind of spread throughout the Ivy Leagues a little bit.
Because they talk about how a member from there came and opened up a chapter here. At the U of U. So I looked into that. It's legit.
Yeah.
It's legit, and that took me maybe 10 minutes to find out.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't have to say, "Oh, that's bull crap." Well, whatever. They said, "No, look it up." So I did, and it was true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I went back and I looked at some of the interviews where they asked point blank, where they're like, President Bush, we've heard that you're in the Skull and Crossbones Society or whatever. What's that all about? And he goes, yeah, yep.
Move on.
Let's move on to the next question. You know what I mean? He's like, talk
Yeah,
about it.
I want to stay alive, so let's go on to
was
the next
awkward
question.
and
Well,
weird.
they're covenanted not to reveal their secrets.
Right.
Yeah.
It's Book of Mormon.
Yeah, it parrots the temple, right?
Yes.
Well, but then you see that, like, just like you were saying at the first, like, so George Bush is a member of the Skull and Crossbones, or they call it the Order.
Yeah.
Right? And then John Kerry is also a member of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then, they go on to show how people on both sides of the aisle are a part of this, and then it goes even further where they go back to the originating of some of these things where they're like, basically the goal here is to, no matter who gets put in, there's not going to be any hiccup in what we're trying to accomplish here.
It's like, I'm going to go back to pop culture.
Yeah.
But it's like the Matrix, right?
Yes.
And how they institute the Matrix.
Yeah.
They get the people to willingly accept it, right? They give them the choice. But the choice is really a falsity because you're still forced into the system.
Exactly.
And that's where we're at politically.
Yeah.
And it's genius, really, if you look at it.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
this is Lucifer. I mean, he's smart, right? There's a reason why he is what he is.
Right.
And the fact that he is in the Democratic Republic, and controls both ends of the scale.
Yep.
He can we can fight it out for forever. He's like, it doesn't matter. I control it. And, today is the day of my power.
Yeah.
Right.
I reign to the ends of the earth.
Yep.
Well, again,
and there's none that dare molest.
You go back to presidents of America. You go back to Woodrow Wilson. Reinstituted the KKK, resegregated the military, put public education as what it is, the indoctrination camp for factory workers.
Right.
Total evil dude. Marxist, out the yin-yang. He was more propaganda than Hitler. Hitler took advice from Goebbels and from Woodrow Wilson's administration.
Yeah.
Then you have Calvin Coolidge come in.
Yeah.
And you have Calvin Coolidge reduce the size of government by half, and then in his second term, he cut it in half again. They couldn't allow that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
had to step in.
had to stop that kind of
Yep.
reduction of their power.
Yep.
And so you have, from Hoover on, the one exception of trying to reduce size and scope of government, and he didn't do it that well, was Trump. He was the one who came in who was not part of this good boys club, if
Yeah.
you want to call it that.
And
He promised to drain the swamp, couldn't quite pull it off because this is entrenched into
Yep.
every level of bureaucracy. We are ruled over not by the 500-something dudes who actually get elected, but by the hundreds of thousands of people who are bureaucrats who write all the actual legislation.
And it's worldwide as well. It's
Yep.
Yeah, and they do it for every nation. I mean, these things, Obamacare wasn't written in between the time he got elected and a couple of months later when they tried to pass it.
yeah.
That was 1,000 pages sitting on a shelf of how do we make America a socialist healthcare
No,
state.
it's the same thing with any gun law that has magically happened a day later. As soon as there's a shooting or something, hey, we drafted this thing last night that's 1,000 pages.
Yeah, we just geniusly came up with
And
it.
they all come up with essentially ghost stories or just myths for you to pay attention to as they do this other law that allows them to perpetuate things
Yeah.
like the Patriot Act
Exactly.
or massive spending.
It's funny how it's always named something, but it's completely opposite. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yes.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Oh, that's a sheep a wolf in sheep's clothing
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
You look at, there's so many bills that get passed in states and the United States level where they have, these, the names sound so, they're meant to appeal to the Christian
Right.
values, the conservative values. Then you go read it and it's exact opposite of what it's saying.
Exactly.
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 It's the whole reason why we have inflation the way we do. I mean, when we went off the gold standard, the entire purpose was now we can steal the people's wealth and they won't know it. Because before then, you had to actually print money in association with the accumulation of gold and
Right.
wealth.
Yeah.
It was actually backed by something.
Exactly.
Yep.
But when they stripped that away, you have nothing that the money is actually backed by. And they have been able to go from that setting to now where trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars digitized into thin air, given to organizations in stock markets, especially a company like BlackRock, which now is the largest landowner in the world, especially of American property.
Yep.
And you have
biggest contributor to our house prices right now.
Yes. And I mean, in a very real way, this is conspiring to get gain.
Right.
This is murder to get gain. You are eliminating our wealth, not by making it so that I'm taxing everything you own, but making it so that, well, hey, that $10,000 you had that you wanted to put as a down payment on a house, well, house prices have just quadrupled. Good luck ever owning one.
Yeah.
And then the World Economic Forum, the theory of Marxism, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it.
Yep.
They are executing that at every level, and their goal is to usurp every farm, every property that they can. These UN forums, they want every nation to own 30% of their properties by 2030 and 50% by 2050, and they're pulling it off.
Yep.
And they're pulling it off not because they're saving up money to buy it. They're just digitizing the money, purchasing houses and driving up the market. But what do they care? They're ridiculously wealthy.
Oh, yeah.
We're the ones who are suffering a loss of the value of our labor and of our money.
Well, and it's crazy too, because I think for the first time, maybe not for the first time, but for the first time that I can tell in history, we're seeing, like, Nebuchadnezzar had to have gold, right? He had to have gold. All these other guys, the pharaohs, had to have gold, right?
Yeah.
For the first time in history, you don't have to have gold anymore, you know?
Yeah.
It's almost like control has become the currency. And,
Yeah,
and
it is.
everything else is just kind of thin air, poof, whatever. We can make it, you know what I mean? It's all about control.
Yeah.
Control is the true currency. And that's freaky, you
Yeah.
know? Because there's no...
These nations, they treat their citizens as their currency.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Very literally, with their birth certificates, your permission to exist, your identification numbers, your passports that you have to present, you're treated like a currency.
And at least with Rome, at some point they ran out of money. They ran thin on money. And when they started to try to do some like quantitative easing in their time frame, it blew up in their face, right?
Yeah.
There was no way that they could control it on the level that we can today because of our technology.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that doesn't exist. It will. They are holding back a tide right now.
Yeah.
It's like that. There's a big dam of
Hyperinflation.
yeah, hyperinflation and like consequence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. Of consequences that they are holding back, and as soon as they choose that it's time to allow that to happen, It will happen, and it will happen in consequence of them trying to steer us in a direction.
Yeah, it'll be control.
Yeah,
like you
it'll be
said.
control.
I mean, it's essentially it's going back to the comedy thing where you pull back a branch, right? And you're increasing the tension and tension until you decide you're ready to let go and smack the person in the face, right? And unfortunately, most of us have no clue that the branch is being drawn back in front of us.
Yeah. We fall right into it. I joined the military because of the two towers being hit.
Oh yeah,
That was I said, "Okay, I'm jumping
emotionally
in."
manipulated.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a hard pill to swallow for me to look back on that and be like, "Oh my gosh, we all got played."
Yeah,
we got played. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who still won't admit that now because that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
Yeah.
But think about what that really means when you admit to yourself that your government is corrupt.
Yeah.
It's the accountability thing, right? Pre-Earth life. The plan's presented, you're immediately accountable. When you're presented with this information, you're immediately accountable. What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, most of us don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I am at a loss for words of how I could impact the world.
Yeah.
So
I had that thought today.
Powerlessness.
What do I do? Don't I?
What are we supposed to do here? Yeah.
And in a very real way, we're not exactly envious of being the first in line for the concentration camp.
Right.
But we are willing to put our voices out there to speak this truth because if and hopefully as everybody wakes up who listens, there's a chance for change. There's a chance somebody who could actually make a difference. There's a chance you are somebody who could actually make a difference. And it takes being aware of these things to know how to vote a certain way, to know, maybe you've got to be politically active in some way. We as members of the church, we're very used to keep the commandments. We're
follow the prophet. Yeah.
Right?
We're top-down infrastructure. The church predisposes us to that, right?
And there's a guy, Errol Weber, who put out this quote: "You comply because you want it to end, but it's because of your compliance that it may never end."
Yes.
Yeah. It's true.
That is so true. Yeah, that hits home. That one hits home big time.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're saying before, it's like, what do I do with this?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Do
find
not comply.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the mask all over again, right? How many people, myself included, wore a mask?
Yeah.
We didn't want to,
Yeah.
because it was a small thing that they're asking us to do, and everyone was telling me that I was unchristian.
Right.
I was a godless animal. I wasn't living up to my religious responsibilities, right? And so I capitulated, right?
Yeah.
And because, like I said, wanting it to go away, right? But I can't go back to that anymore,
Well, and it's as I was listening, as I have kind of been on this discovery journey of figuring a lot of this stuff out, of doing some of my own research, watching a lot of these documentaries, a lot of these presentations by patriotic people, right?
Yeah.
Every single one of them saying, "Do your own research, please."
Yeah, just look into it.
It's one of those things, and you get eventually to the end result where it's like, you know what? There is a reason why only 50% of the church is going to have oil in their lamps when the bridegroom cometh. And every time I come to that conclusion, it still is jarring to me. You know what I mean? It's still jarring.
Yeah.
We're talking about half. Half of not even just the church as a whole, but those of us who are active in the church. That's what I think is. It's taking a sampling of the sampling, right, of people that actually are attending and stuff like that, and that's not a big percentage. That's not a big percentage of people that are awake.
No.
And when you think about it like that, it's kind of demoralizing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, so we're few in number here. You know what I mean?
Well, then you also take into consideration that the church now has many more members outside of our
Right.
nation than within.
Right.
And it makes you wonder how
And
much
they-
of that half is actually here.
Yeah.
You know?
And they don't, it's one of those things where it's like, we have built into our DNA as a nation, and that's why they have such a hard time with America, is because we don't like being controlled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have a rebellious DNA in us that does not like that.
Yeah. They have to be super crafty about
Yeah,
how they do
and
it.
they are, and it's working. It's totally
That's
working.
The entire thing this
Yeah.
last year was. It was
Yeah.
a test.
Yeah.
How far can we push?
Exactly.
And who responds to
Mhm.
the push?
And how do other groups and stuff respond to this? And
Here's a fun quote from Frederick Douglass. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed on them.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's exactly what we've been through. A test of how far will we be able to push and people quietly
Yeah.
go along with. We are literally in the thick of the great deception.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We really are. And it's like we are. My prediction is, well, here, let me preface this with a quote here. This is How to Change a Culture, from the Communist Manifesto. In the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads, by means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which, in the course of movement, outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads upon the old social order.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That last little part there, inroads upon the old social order, is what I was thinking of. And it's like, look at how many of our church membership now are openly calling for homosexual marriage in our temples.
Yeah.
These are members in good standing, right?
Yeah.
These aren't wild, crazy people, you know.
I saw a debate the other day from a BYU professor.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, this is like, we're gonna see more fracturing, more separating of the wheat and the tares through this, because they are using, our old order, our old social order here. Just like, we definitely did put that link in there because
You're gonna go back to Godby?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because it's like, you go back to that, and he was, this guy was into the occult.
Yeah.
And he hid it.
It's interesting. Like, I'd love to understand. Okay, because he said he was a member.
Yeah.
Right. But he was openly into these things.
He played
and
everybody.
He wanted those things.
Yeah.
So it was like, did he actually believe that he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and could believe these things and thought he was doing good work? Or was he just a minion of the devil and knew what he was doing, and so and he was usurping from inside? And in many ways, it's like Inception. Like the Communist Party, they've repeated it so much into our country that they no longer have to be the voice anymore, because they've ingrained it, and we are now repeating it to each other. Good, wholesome people have been so influenced by the secret combinations. They're doing the work for them. It's going back to what you're saying before.
Like, you don't know you're participating in it.
No, that's why it's genius.
Yeah.
It is like Inception. It becomes your idea.
It becomes your idea.
So here's a quote.
It's been taken over by the host body.
Yes.
Tolerance will reach such a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as to not offend the imbeciles.
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally at that point where
Jordan Peterson.
You're not allowed to offend people,
Mm-hmm.
so you have to make yourself stupid
Mm-hmm.
so that you can get along. And we're in the middle of it every week. You're surrounded by people who are fully good people, but just not willing to consider this horrible possibility that may be going on in the world. The idea that we could be in that last of the last days.
Yeah.
They refuse to consider it. And to a degree, I get it, because
all is well in Zion.
It's a hard thing to consider.
Well, and I think it freaks people out, because I know that I can speak for myself. Like, just learning this stuff, it's like, okay, so what do I have a responsibility to do now with this information?
Yeah.
Right. And obviously we're doing the best we can with this podcast, but what more can we do? Now, should we as a podcast group reach out to Defending Utah Radio and maybe talk to them about it? Like have a little, see if they want to collaborate a little bit?
Maybe.
We're very small, it's probably not worth their time.
Yeah. If anyone at Defending Utah is interested,
Yeah.
I think they wouldn't mind.
But you know what I mean? Like what like there is always going to be, especially in this church,
Yep.
responsibility and something required of you.
Yeah.
This is not one of those things where you get to shirk responsibility and you get to coast.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in this church.
Yeah.
And when you come into information like this, like Moroni had, right, and Mormon and stuff, it's like they did the best they could to tell people about it forcefully, And doing so today, you could lose your house, your job, your life. You could suicide yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you pose enough of a threat. If they can't laugh you off and put you off as a court jester.
Yeah. If you're not laughed off the stage, you either have to be bought in or bought out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've had people say to me, "Hey, you need to be careful about what you're saying on these things."
I've had the same thing.
Because you speak out, and they might just target you first. You might, lose your ability to do your job.
They could hit you
spend your
with
money.
IRS. They could hit you with anything.
Oh yeah, there's so many. The secret combinations are so controlling. They could hit us with stuff that we wouldn't even recognize.
Yeah.
Out of hand. Right.
And I'm not immune to it. I'm probably guilty of breaking the law because the IRS.
They've designed the tax code to be used as a weapon.
Yeah. Yep. Whenever they want.
As long as you're not causing trouble, they're not going to bug you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you start causing trouble, we're going to find something on you.
That's the entire reason they record every phone call,
Right.
every text,
Exactly.
every person,
Exactly.
and can remotely turn on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a time everywhere through Scripture, everywhere. And even if you go back to a lot of the Jewish traditions and stuff like that, where they talk about Abraham, like Abraham, there seems to be this theme where Nimrod gets this prophecy about a boy, a baby boy who's going to be born, who's going to usurp him, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes through and he does the killing of the babies in his day, right?
Yeah.
And Abraham's dad winds up taking him and sending him up to live with Grandpa Noah, right? Up in the mountains of Ararat and stuff. And it goes through all this stuff, but in the end, it's Abraham standing with nothing but his faith before Babylon and the king of Babylon,
Yep.
Before Nimrod, where it's like, either Jehovah's going to come back me up or he's not, and I'm going to die a martyr. You know what I mean? And I keep thinking about that. It's like, man, like we're in that, if we're not in that position now, then we're like, there's never has been anybody in that
I mean,
position.
seriously, name the prophet. You know? Abraham, Elijah, Samuel,
Daniel,
Daniel,
Abinadi.
Abinadi.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, though?
Alma.
We are. If this is David and Goliath stuff, this is like Goliath and an ant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost ridiculous the amount of power that we're looking at here. And it's like, it's almost
the fourth beast kingdom.
It's the fourth beast kingdom, and it's like, are you willing to stare, look in the face of that and not blink? You know what I mean? I've been doing some this is some soul searching stuff, man. You know what I mean?
Playing some emotion or spiritual chicken.
I totally am. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like, man,
But at the same time, it's like you talked about the parable of the virgins. I also think of it like the wheat and the tares.
Mm-hmm.
We are maturing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're maturing to the point where you can't be a tare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're wheat. We're grown up wheat.
Yep.
You can't look at us and say, "Oh, I wonder which one they are."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wheat and tares, right? When they're growing up, you can't tell the difference, right? But when they mature, that's when you can see it, right? That's when the difference starts to emerge, and that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think that's why, and this has come from so many different places. People talking about how these years and the next couple of years are going to be eye-opening because of all these things being brought to light.
Right.
And I think it's because it's the wheat and the tares are finally maturing to the state that they cannot hide anymore. The sheep can't, or the wolf can't hide in the sheep's clothing anymore. Yeah. It's becoming too obvious. Yeah. And so there's these options, there's things all around you if you look for it, right? And like you said, sometimes just a Google search is enough to get you going, but you need to be able to consider different things. Right. You need to be able to look around and have your heart open to it. And yeah, you're right. Like you said, it's just going to be a little scary. It can be a little overwhelming. Yeah. But there's no other way through this than through it. You can't get around this. This is inevitable.
It is what
as to what we're going through. Yeah. So might as well get good at it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not going away.
Yeah, that's true. And there's so much more we could go into. Like,
I was just thinking, like, do I get into how, like, these Ford and Rockefeller and all these rich families were the cause of all this corruption? Yep. They funded all these private organizations of teach the Mormons not to be Mormon.
Yep. And it's working.
Yep.
I mean, there really is just so much we could get into.
Pick the sphere. I mean, you can tie back the news channels to 3 major conglomerates. Yeah. Basically three people, maybe like 3 eagle heads, that have control over our entire news system, which is considered to be the way that we get infallible truth. Yeah. Right? That's just one section. We could talk about that for a whole episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? The entertainment, how everybody who is in a position of entertainment has either been bought in or they have something on them, right? And they parrot the agenda. There's a reason why Hollywood is so far.
There's a reason why Mel Gibson got blacklisted for exposing.
Yeah. Yes. You ever hear about Mel Gibson much anymore, do you?
I don't know how he's been able to do a couple films since. But, the same thing with, is it Sorbo?
Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah. Same kind of thing with him. Speak out. Agents won't touch you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. Now you can only find him on the Christian movies.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's all over those.
But it really is. You can't stand out as faithful to God, faithful to truth, and expect this cult, really, this secret combination, to be okay with you.
Yeah.
They are telling you, you become acquainted with our secret works, or we will destroy you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, there's a talk that Neil A. Maxwell gave a long time ago where he's like, I like the spunk of a particular military general who was surrounded and embattled. And he said, gentlemen, we are surrounded by enemies. We can fire in every direction. And he related that at the time to the church. He's like, to all of you, I say, we are surrounded by opposition, but we can serve in every direction. And it's almost kind of going back to DNC where, the Lord's talking to his servant. It's like, you can go north, south, east, or west. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which way you go.
Yeah.
So many apostates.
Basically, opportunity abounds in front of you, right? And so I think there's a reason why we did this one after Hope.
Right.
We felt like Hope was a good place to reach us up. So maybe it was a good time to hit on some of these things because you're right. Holding on to hope is important through these things.
Right.
And I'll make the point, if you are the only person in the entire world who is not a part of the secret combinations, but God is with you, that's enough.
Yeah.
The entire world against you and God will not be able to take it over.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And that's just one person. We are many. We can rely on each other. And so I think that's the reason why we're doing this. We're not trying to get people to sink down into the depths.
Right.
Inversely, we're trying to get people to stand up.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, sometimes that means having to hit your head against this a little bit, have your heart fail you a little bit, but then you have to rebound with the Spirit, with Christ, with the atonement, and find your way back up out of this.
Yeah.
This is it's a clarion call for us really to unite.
Yeah.
And like you said, what do we do from here? I don't know. Until we get enough of us that actually see it and know it, we won't know, I think. Because we'll need to get as many people involved as possible who will understand what we can do. For us, we're not quite sure, but you get the right people involved and you get enough support behind them, then you have Martin Luther King.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have the revolutions coming. Now, we know to some degree how this needs to go. We know that Babylon's kind of have to rule the day a little
Yeah,
bit.
they're going to squeeze us.
Yep. But it doesn't mean that we can't rally together
Right.
and worship Christ despite that, and find hope with each other.
Yeah.
And find renewing of our spirit through that. And that we can walk as children of light through that. And I'll say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Well said. That was very sly how you slipped in there.
It felt right. I
was
felt
good.
myself gearing up, and it was time.
It was good. That was good.
You know, I think that we're at a point where each of us individually do need to pick a side.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And more so than just picking a side, we have to realize what that consequence could mean. We had a very clear path laid in front of us that helped us realize that a good, half the country, totally cool with authoritative dictates from a government that will just tyranny you.
Yep.
And I think if you want to be not the brown shirt and not the silent German, you've got to prepare yourself mentally to hide a Jew, to protect someone, or to have to be vocal enough to need protection. We've got so much pressure against us to conform. And we as a people are so used to just saying, yeah, I'll conform. And that can't be how we move forward when who's trying to make us conform. One of my favorite quotes is, I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. Richard Feynman.
Hmm.
We are being force-fed answers, and when you question them, you get banned from Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I have people I talk to who don't dare like a post I've shared because it might flag them. They feel like just the simple act of oh, I like that, is going to put them on a list. I might have been saving this for a small and simple thing. Maybe I'll still do it anyways. But that first decision you have to make of whether or not you're going to tell the truth or a lie. Dr. Peterson again talked about when he would get questions all the time of kids coming up and saying, hey, I've got a professor who wants me to say a certain thing. If I don't say that, I'm not going to get a good grade. I'm going to fail his class. And he said, you cannot compromise and lie, because as soon as that first time you decide to lie will be the hardest decision you'll ever make. And then every time after that, that decision will be easier. And in 4 years, you'll look back and you won't recognize the person who had to make that choice.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
You have a choice to mature. You will mature, but what will you mature into? A wheat or a tare? So we look now at this opportunity ahead of us, and are you willing to be vocal? Are you willing to stand for something, as President Hinckley said?
Mm-hmm.
And every time you do, you give courage to someone else. Every time you stand for something, that's the whole reason we bear testimony in church. Because every time we do, we give courage to someone else. We show by our example how easy it can be. Not consequence-free, but really, the consequences of this earth aren't the only thing to care about. I'll say that in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen.
Very well said. I'm going to go to Ether here because I think it's important for us to hear this and, to kind of end where we started here. This is Ether chapter 8, starting in verse 23. Wherefore, O ye Gentiles, it is wisdom in God that these things should be shown unto you. that thereby ye may repent of your sins, and suffer not that these murderous combinations shall get above you, which are built up to get power and gain. And the work, yea, even the work of destruction come upon you, yea, even the sword of the justice of the eternal God shall fall upon you, to your overthrow and destruction, if ye shall suffer these things to be. And then I'm going to go to verse 24. Wherefore the Lord commandeth you, when ye shall see these things come up among you, that ye shall awake to a sense of your awful situation, because of this secret combination which shall be among you. He didn't say which could be, right? He said which shall be among you. Or woe be unto it because of the blood of them who have been slain, for they cry from the dust for vengeance upon it, and also upon those who built it up.
Yep.
You could go further, but I think those two verses really kind of are very powerful, very potent, messages to us.
God's using the shall language. That's pretty airtight.
Exactly. And I think that, especially where he says that the sword of the justice of the eternal God shall fall upon you. He's saying that not to the people that are doing this stuff, right? He's not saying, yeah, the sword of justice will fall on those secret combinations. He's saying, no, you. I'm talking to you who are aware, who are listening to and reading my words right now. The sword of justice will fall upon you to your overthrow. Because if we have this kind of information, right, we know that this is among us and we do nothing about it, then the blood of those people that have fallen to this stuff is on our hands as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we know, and as it's been quoted many a time, all it takes for evil to thrive and survive is for good men to do nothing. And so that is my challenge, not only to the audience, to our audience, but to myself, is what am I going to do about this? What can I do about this? I'm going to find out what I can do, and I'm going to do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to do something. And I hope that everybody else will do the same. And whatever that is, take it to God and ask him, what should I do with this?
Use your divine imagination.
Use your divine imagination, exactly. Or maybe go to the scriptures and see, come up with something yourself.
plug.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry.
No, but it's true. You know what I mean? It's like, if we don't do anything about this, then we deserve everything that's coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I will leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.